Welcome to RMM Help. In this session we provide an overview of generic assets and work in RMM. We take administration, our work code files, and generic work and assets. So what are and why do we use generic assets and work? Well, the RMM Asset Register contains real tangible assets, such as property, land, vehicles, plant and equipment. These are the assets that we will potentially carry out PPMs on, and they will accrue a life cycle cost. We may, however, want to identify other items in a generic way, such as our electrical infrastructure or our plumbing infrastructure, but not identify every single item. If we had to identify every light switch or power socket, this would create an asset register so large as it would become unmanageable. However, we will inevitably need to log unplanned work help desk jobs for such items as a faulty light or a leaking radiator. In these and similar instances, we can set up our generic assets and work, and we can log work against them and have them appear in the help desk for all our locations. So to summarize at this point, generic assets and work are the same, they're interchangeable. So here's our list of user-definable generic assets and work descriptions. These are intuitive descriptions because they will appear right throughout your work processing in the system. And you'll notice that our generic work IDs are all in the range of numbers of 9 million. So we've got 9,000,001 as our first. Now we utilize this range of numbers to prevent duplication with our general asset IDs. They're much easier to identify throughout the system, and that generic work ID of 9,000,001 and electrical installation, when chosen, will appear right throughout the system. So I feel that our descriptions there explain themselves, and here we have a column that we can't edit, and that's the maintenance cost. Every time we book work to a generic asset or generic work, any costs that we enter during feedback are automatically displayed and accumulated in this column. They appear individually within the work detail form, so each job has its own cost and a breakdown of the total cost for a job, and then all our costs for electrical installation appear in here. Now you might think, how do we drill down into that maintenance cost? We've got a large figure here as our total cost of maintenance for electrical installation. But let's say, for instance, we wanted to find out how much electrical work we'd done for a particular location and for a particular type of work. So to do this, we'll go into our work lists and we'll use the work detail list in this example. So we want to find all our electrical installation work for the general hospital. So we'll start with our location, so we'll choose the site, and I'll put in here General Hospital. Just put in the word general, we'll find it. And that's found 965 records. The next thing that we want to do is to choose our asset type of electrical installation, and we'll do our 9,000,001, which is electrical installation, and that's returned 12 records. So we now know for our Allerton General Hospital all our electrical installation work is now displayed. What we want to do is we want to look at a different work type. Let's say, for instance, we've been told that there's a high level of vandalism. So we'll type in vandalism, and we've now filtered that down to 6. Right, so summarizing there, the fact that we're using a generic asset and work of a type of work in amongst all of our work, it's easy to find it and identify it. At that point, we could use select all, and we could run a standard work report. Let's say, for instance, we just wanted a listing of that work. We could produce a summary report, such as that work summary list. And there's our 6 records. If we then said, well, we'd actually like to see the costs on this, what we could do is we could export it into Excel, and we can sum it in Excel, or alternatively we could run one of the other reports in the system, and let's choose something like the cost estimate and variance report. Now, as with all of our standard reports, entering as much information as possible is very helpful. So we'll put in not completed. Our owner was the General Hospital. Our cost centre is property overheads, and our work type that we were looking for was vandalism. And at that point we can run the report. I'll hide the actions pane, and here we can see a full picture of all our costs associated with vandalism in the General Hospital. So at that point we know that we can audit our work throughout the system, but what about logging a job and seeing our generic assets there? Just before we do that, we'll go to the administration section and have a quick look in our control file, and in the help desk area you can see that we've got an option there where it says generic first on selection. This is when we're selecting an asset, we identify the location, and then when the asset list is displayed, we can either have our generic assets sitting at the top of the list or at the bottom of the list, and because it's ticked here, they'll be at the top of the list. So we'll go to work and we'll log a job, and we'll choose our General Hospital as the site. We'll choose the main building, and because we've been dealing with accident and emergency, we'll choose that. And here's our generic assets. Now, we don't have any real assets here. If they were, they'd be beneath this and they would say real assets. So we'll choose our electrical installation, and we say we've got a faulty light fitting. We'll select that as regular work. It says there's already 6 jobs. We saw those before, so we'll say no to that. We don't want to look at them, and we save our job. So to summarize, here's our generic asset of electrical installation. We've seen how we can cost that and audit it right throughout the system. We can produce reports, We can export that generic assets and work into Excel, and it's a straightforward and efficient way of identifying work areas for every location. So this concludes the overview of generic assets and work in ResMan.